Imagine for a second claiming you fought in the Trojan War.
Okay.
And not just that, but you vividly remember the exact shield you carried. And you claim it's like hanging in a specific temple right now.
Right, which sounds completely crazy.
Exactly. I mean, if you're the ancient Greek philosopher Pythagoras, historians basically call you a weirdo for this.
Yeah.
It's treated as this strange, isolated footnote for a guy who is otherwise, super analytical.
Yeah, bizarre little quirk.
And here's the thing. If you cross the world into ancient India with that exact same claim, you've just described the absolute cornerstone of their entire spiritual tradition.
You really have, which, I mean, it fundamentally changes how we interact with their historical literature.
Yeah.
Remembering past lives wasn't some eccentric quirk for them. It was literally the lens through which they understood morality, causality, and, well, human suffering.
And that actually brings us to our mission for you today. So welcome back to Simplified Awakening. If you're new here, please hit that subscribe button, like this video, and share your valuable comment down below. Today we're doing a deep dive into a massive stack of ancient texts.
A really massive stack.
Right. Specifically, we're looking at excerpts from the Jataka. And for those who might not know, this is a monumental collection of 550 ancient Buddhist birth stories.
Yeah.
But we aren't just looking at religious dogma today. We're digging into some of the absolute oldest pieces of folklore in the human historical record.
And the cultural footprint of these texts is just staggering. I mean, what we're looking at here is a foundational blueprint. It shows how ancient Indian thought mapped out the concepts of karma, perseverance, and honestly, what it actually means to be a decent living creature.
It's amazing. Think of this deep dive as your ultimate shortcut to that wisdom. We're extracting the humor, the grit, and honestly, the surprisingly brutal moral philosophy embedded in these tales. So, yeah, let's unpack this.
Let's do it.
How exactly are these stories built? Because reading through the sources, I noticed they aren't just random fables, They all follow this highly specific, almost architectural formula.
Yeah, the structure is actually what makes them so unique. Like, every single Jataka tale is constructed on this really rigid three-part architecture.
Okay, what's the first part?
First up, the text presents what's called the story of the present. This is basically the trigger. Usually it details a real-time event that happened during the historical life of the Buddha, Siddhartha Gautama.
Like an inciting incident.
Exactly. For instance, maybe a monk in his order makes a critical mistake, or someone in the local community faces this profound spiritual struggle.
Like someone gets distracted by greed, or they want to abandon their vows because, it's just too hard.
Yeah, just everyday human failings. And then comes the second part, which is the story of the past.
Oh, this is the good stuff.
Right. So to address the monk's current struggle, the Buddha basically accesses that exact power Pythagoras claimed to have, but on a cosmic scale. He remembers a past life where this exact same psychological dynamic played out. So he narrates a story from deep in the ancient past to illustrate the lesson.
And in these stories, he could be anything, right?
Oh, totally. Maybe he was a king, maybe an animal, maybe just a street vendor.
Which sets up the third part, which they call the identification.
Yes.
The story wraps up, and the Buddha essentially points around the room, revealing which of the historical characters from that ancient past life correspond to the people sitting right in front of him in the present.
It's wild.
Right. The struggling monk basically realizes he's making the same exact mistake he made 1,000 lifetimes ago.
It really creates this fascinating narrative loop. I mean, it takes an isolated moment of human failure and expands it onto this giant canvas of eternal recurrence.
The scale of it is just amazing. But here's the major aha moment I had while going through the prefaces to these translations.
Oh, what was that?
These stories of the past didn't just stay neatly contained in Buddhist monasteries. They're like these stray waifs of global literature that broke loose and just floated around the world for centuries.
Oh, absolutely.
I was floored to read that Chaucer unwittingly used a Jataka story for his partner's tale. And there's another one that shows up in the writings of the ancient Greek historian Herodotus.
What's fascinating here is how Buddhism utilized these wandering global folk tales. I mean, historical analysis suggests many of these stories might have started as just casual secular fables.
Like bedtime stories.
Yeah, or simple merchant tales passed along trade routes. But by placing them within the framework of reincarnation.
By adding the present story and the identification.
Exactly. By doing that, the tradition completely transformed them. The architecture itself turns a simple animal fable into this profound explanation of karmic causality.
It's so smart.
It really demonstrates that human struggles are utterly universal, jumping across continents and belief systems.
Well, speaking of secular merchant tales, I actually need to push back on an assumption a lot of people might have going into this.
Okay, let's hear it.
When you picture Buddhist texts from like 500 BCE, you probably imagine stories of quiet meditation, renunciation, sitting serenely under lotus trees.
Yeah, standard image.
Right. But a huge chunk of these tales are shockingly aggressive and practical. Some of them read less like a monastic text and more like, I don't know, an ancient startup guide for entrepreneurs.
They really do. The early texts place a massive emphasis on worldly grit and hustle. To understand the philosophy, we have to examine how they viewed resourcefulness.
Okay, let's look at the mouse merchant, specifically the Kulakasehi Jataka. This is the ultimate started from the bottom story.
It really is.
We have this young man in severely reduced circumstances, and he overhears a wise royal treasurer mention in passing that a truly clever man could start a lucrative business with nothing but a dead mouse lying on the road.
Just a random dead mouse.
Right. And this young man takes him completely literally.
He spots the hidden value in something entirely discarded.
Exactly. So he picks up the dead mouse and sells it to a local tavern for their cat. And he makes a single farthing.
Not much, but it's a start.
Then he uses that tiny coin to buy molasses, which he trades to thirsty flower gatherers for a handful of flowers. He just keeps trading up day by day.
The hustle is real.
It is. Then this massive storm hits, and the king's garden is covered in fallen branches. Our guy sees an opportunity. He offers to clear the entire garden for free on the condition that he gets to keep the wood.
Which is brilliant.
And he doesn't even do the work. He bribes some local kids with his molasses to do all the heavy lifting, clears the garden, and immediately sells the wood to the king's potter, who desperately needs fuel for his kilns.
His ability to leverage small advantages is just remarkable.
Oh, but wait, he doesn't stop there. He hears a horse dealer is coming to town with a massive herd of 500 horses.
Oh yeah, this part is great.
He immediately goes to the local grass mowers and tells them, "Give me a bundle of grass each and don't sell any of yours until mine is sold."
So he essentially creates a local monopoly on horse feed.
Yes, forcing the dealer to buy from him, and he makes 1,000 pieces of gold. Finally, he hears a cargo ship is arriving at the port. He hires a fancy carriage, rolls down to the docks looking like a billionaire, buys the entire ship's cargo on credit, using his signet ring as a deposit,
Unbelievable.
and then flips those shares to other desperate merchants. In 4 months, he turns one dead mouse into 200,000 pieces of gold.
It's an incredible story. And in the identification at the end, we learn that this hyper-resourceful young man was an earlier incarnation of one of the Buddha's followers.
Okay.
And the wise treasurer who gave the initial advice, that was the Bodhisattva.
Yeah.
And we should probably define that term since it appears constantly in the texts.
Yeah, please do.
The Bodhisattva, which literally translates to a being on the path to awakening, is the central heroic figure in all these past life stories. It is the entity that will eventually, after many grueling lifetimes, become the historical Buddha.
Wait, hold on, though. Let's look at what this bodhisattva is endorsing here. Monopolizing horse feed during a supply crisis. Buying cargo on margin to flip it to locals.
I know where you're going with this.
I mean, this doesn't sound like spiritual enlightenment. This sounds like ruthless, opportunistic capitalism. How on earth is this a spiritual virtue?
It's a crucial distinction to make. See, in the ancient Indian context, the primary mechanism for spiritual progression is Viriya, which basically translates to energy, unyielding effort, or diligence.
Okay.
The texts are arguing that the exact same mental faculty required to see market inefficiencies and leverage a dead mouse into a furching, that's the exact same faculty required to see through the illusions of reality and achieve enlightenment.
Oh, wow. I never thought of it that way.
Yeah, lethargy is the enemy of both wealth and spiritual awakening.
Ah, so the grit itself is the virtue, regardless of the arena it's applied to.
Precisely. And we see the stakes of this grit raised even higher in the desert well. That's the Vantapatha Jataka. In this story, the Bodhisattva is a caravan leader traveling across a brutal 60-league desert. The sand gets as hot as glowing charcoal during the day, so they have to travel by night.
Sounds miserable.
It is. They're on their final stretch, but the pilot falls asleep, the oxen turn around in the dark, and they end up right back where they started the previous evening.
Oh, that's devastating.
And having thrown away their water reserves in anticipation of reaching the city, the entire caravan just gives up. They fling themselves under the carts to die.
But the leader refuses to surrender.
Right. The bodhisattva spots a single clump of grass. He deduces there must be moisture deep underneath.
Because grass can't grow without water.
Exactly. He forces the exhausted men to dig 60 cubits down, but they hit solid rock. Once again, everyone loses heart.
Naturally.
But the leader climbs down the shaft, puts his ear to the rock, and hears water flowing beneath it. He calls a serving lad, hands him a heavy iron hammer, and says, "If you give in, we shall all perish." The lad summons his final ounce of strength, smashes the rock, and the water bursts up as high as a palm tree.
If you give in, we shall all perish. I mean, that is such a stark distillation of their view on effort. The universe isn't going to just hand you water or enlightenment just because you're suffering.
Right.
You have to swing the hammer.
Which perfectly contrasts with the Jataka's view on cognitive laziness.
Oh, right. Because for every hyper-competent caravan leader, there is a spectacular fool.
Absolutely.
Take the foolish valuer. This one's funny.
Oh.
A greedy king fires his incredibly honest, competent valuer and replaces him with an absolute idiot. Why? Simply because he thinks an ignorant man will be cheaper to manipulate.
Flawless logic.
So a horse dealer arrives with a massive herd of 500 horses. The foolish valuer, having been bribed with a tiny sum, officially values the entire herd at exactly one single measure of rice.
An insultingly terrible deal for the merchant.
Right, so the merchant realizes he has to play the game. He bribes the fool again.
Yeah.
The next day, in front of the king, the merchant says, "Okay, we agree the horses are worth a measure of rice. But for the official court record, could you please tell us what a single measure of rice is worth?"
Setting the trap.
Yep. And the fool confidently announces to the entire royal court that one measure of rice is worth all Benares and its suburbs.
Yeah.
The entire court bursts into laughter and chases him out of the room.
It's a really humorous fable, but, if we analyze it through a modern psychological lens, it's a perfect 2,500-year-old description of the Dunning-Kruger effect.
Oh, that's so true.
The fool doesn't just lack knowledge, he lacks the basic self-awareness to realize his own ignorance. The overarching philosophy tying the clever merchant, the desert leader, and the fool together is that intelligence and perseverance are the engines of karma. Using your intellect is literally a moral obligation.
Here's where it gets really interesting, though, because swinging the hammer and overcoming external obstacles like a desert is only half the battle.
Right.
The texts spend just as much time on internal traps, the ways we actively sabotage our own effort.
The traps of attachment and desire.
Let's talk about the wind antelope. The texts describe this wild, incredibly timid wind antelope that lives deep in the safety of the jungle.
Very cautious creature.
Yeah. And the Yuan king wants it caught, but his gardener doesn't use nets or spears or hunting dogs. He just smears a little bit of sweet honey on some grass.
Just a little treat.
The antelope tastes it, and the gardener slowly, day by day, leaves a trail of honeyed grass leading out of the jungle into the city until the antelope walks right into the king's palace and the heavy doors lock behind it.
The animal is captured and ultimately destroyed without a single weapon ever being drawn.
Listen, if you are listening to this right now and you've ever picked up your smartphone just to check one notification, and suddenly you realize 2 hours have vanished into doom scrolling.
Oh yeah, we've all been there.
You are the wind antelope. It's never one giant, dramatic mistake that ruins our focus or our lives. It's tiny, sweet hits of dopamine. Just a little honey on the grass.
That is a terrifyingly accurate comparison.
Right. And before you know it, you've been drawn completely out of your natural state, and you're trapped in a cage of your own habits.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, the Buddhist mechanics of attachment are perfectly illustrated by that smartphone analogy. The honey represents the lust of taste, which acts as a proxy for all sensory desire. The moment the antelope prioritizes the temporary pleasure of the honey over the long-term reality of its freedom, its karmic trajectory just shifts towards suffering. And the texts point out that desire doesn't always look like active craving. Sometimes it looks like comfortable laziness.
Oh, like the story of the fattened pig. The Movika Jataka.
Exactly.
If you've ever felt resentful because you're working incredibly hard while someone else seems to be coasting through life with unearned success, this story is for you. We have an overworked younger ox complaining to his older brother.
A classic sibling dynamic.
Totally. The two of them do all the grueling heavy lifting on the farm, yet they survive on nothing but dry grass and chaff. Meanwhile, there's this lazy pig named Majika who does absolutely zero work, and he is fed the richest, most delicious boiled rice every single day.
The younger ox feels this deep sense of worldly injustice.
Until the older brother drops the ultimate reality check. The wiser ox explains that the pig is actually eating the food of death.
A dark turn.
Very. The human farmers are fattening him up for an upcoming wedding feast. A few days later, the guests arrive, the butcher's knife comes out, and the lazy pig becomes the main course.
Yep.
The wiser ox points out that their own frugal, unglamorous food is the exact thing guaranteeing their long lives.
The Jatakas are relentlessly emphasizing that our desires, whether for the sweet honey, the rich food, or just the freedom from hard work, are the architects of our own destruction.
Which actually brings us to the trap of stubbornness.
Yeah.
And I really want to dive deep into this specific story for a minute because it's just so brutal, but it explains so much about how they viewed personal responsibility.
You're talking about the Karadiya Jataka.
Yes, the story of the unruly deer. So in this past life, the Bodhisattva is a wise deer leading a herd. His sister brings her young son to him and says, "Brother, this is your nephew. Please teach him deer's ruses."
And these ruses are basically survival tricks, right?
Exactly. How to step quietly, how to hide, basically what a deer needs to know to not get eaten by hunters. The uncle agrees and sets a specific time for the daily lessons.
A very clear path to safety is provided for this kid.
But the young deer just doesn't show up.
Typical teenager.
Right. He skips his lesson the first day to go play. He skips it the second day. He skips it 7 times in a row. He just roams around doing whatever you want.
Ignoring all the warnings.
Completely. And inevitably, he steps directly into a hunter's snare.
Of course.
So the sister's frantic. She runs back to her brother, the wise uncle, and begs him to use his knowledge to save her son. But the uncle flat out refuses.
He assesses the situation and basically denies the request for rescue.
He tells her, "Look, your son has 8 hoofs, branching antlers. He is physically perfect. He has all the tools required to survive." But he actively skipped his lesson 7 times. You cannot teach someone who willfully refuses to learn.
Wow. Cold but fair.
And the story ends with the hunter simply coming and taking the young deer away. There is no magical rescue. The universe doesn't save you from your own willful ignorance.
This is a vital point about karmic physics, really. Karma is not a magical safety net, nor is it a punishing deity. It is simply the inescapable law of cause and effect.
Yeah.
The young deer had all the physical tools, but his ego and his stubbornness severed his connection to wisdom. I mean, he built his own snare long before the hunter ever arrived.
So if giving up in the desert is the ultimate failure, and chasing the honey or indulging our ego is a trap, what does ultimate goodness actually look like in these ancient texts?
That's the big question.
Right. If ambition is good, but desire is bad, what is the end goal?
That is the core philosophical tension of the entire Jataka collection. The texts argue that the ultimate ideal isn't just like passive meditation. The highest form of spiritual realization manifests as active, radical, selfless leadership.
The story of the Banyan Deer illustrates this so beautifully.
It really does.
In this life, the Bodhisattva is born as a magnificent golden deer, the Banyan Deer, who leads a large herd. And there's a second herd sharing the forest, led by the branch deer.
Okay.
The human king of the region loves hunting, and he's terrorizing both herds with random daily slaughter. To minimize the chaos, the 2 deer kings meet and agree to this grim lottery system.
Which is horrifying.
Truly, every single day they will cast lots, and 1 deer will voluntarily walk to the execution block in the king's kitchen so the rest of the herd can live in peace.
It's a terrible compromise, but it requires incredible discipline from the leaders to maintain order.
It works until one day the lot falls on a pregnant doe from the branch deer's herd. She goes to her leader, the branch deer, and pleads with him. She says, "If I die today, my unborn fawn dies too. Please, just let my turn pass to someone else until my baby is born, and then I will gladly go."
Makes complete sense.
But the branch deer refuses. He tells her the lot has been cast, and she just has to accept her fate.
So he enforces the letter of the law, but fails entirely in the spirit of compassion.
Exactly.
Huh.
Desperate, the doe goes to the banyan deer, even though she belongs to a completely different herd.
Right.
The banyan deer listens to her, and without hesitation says, "Go back in peace. I will see that the turn passes over you." But he doesn't force another deer to take her place.
No, he doesn't.
Instead, this golden king of the herd walks directly to the king's kitchen, lies down, and willingly places his own neck on the executioner's block.
This is a completely selfless act.
The cook is so stunned to see the king of the deer offering himself that he runs to fetch the human king. When the human king sees the sheer magnitude of this animal's compassion, he is spiritually shattered. He not only spares the Banyan Deer, but he instantly grants total immunity from hunting to every single living creature in his kingdom.
Now, you might ask how putting his head on a chopping block alters the karmic fabric of reality.
Yeah, how does that work?
In Buddhist philosophy, the deepest illusion is the concept of a separate, permanent self. By willingly sacrificing his own life for a stranger from a different herd, the Banyan Deer completely obliterates the boundary between self and other.
And we see this exact same theme of radical sacrifice play out on a massive cosmic scale in the story of Sakka and the Garudas.
Yes, the chariot chase. This one is epic.
Set the scene for us.
So Sakka is the king of the Devas, essentially the ruler of the gods. He has just suffered a catastrophic defeat in a cosmic war against the Asuras, the demons. To escape, he is fleeing across the ocean in a celestial chariot that is 150 leagues long.
Just an unfathomably massive, world-altering vehicle tearing through the sky.
Exactly. And as he's fleeing in absolute desperation, the wind from his massive chariot begins mowing down the towering silk cotton trees of the forest. Suddenly, Sakka hears this horrific, deafening shrieking.
Oh, no.
He asks his charioteer what the sound is. The charioteer explains that it's the baby Garuda birds, these mythical giant eagles screaming in terror as their nests are crushed and thrown into the sea by the force of their retreat.
So Sakka is faced with an impossible choice.
Right.
Keep fleeing to save his own life and his empire, which means crushing the innocent birds, or turn the chariot around and face the demonic army that wants to annihilate him.
And his response defines the moral core of the texts. Sakka says, "Let us not for empire's sake so act as to destroy life. Rather, I, for their sake, give my life as a sacrifice to the Asuras. Turn the car back."
Wow.
He willingly chooses to sacrifice his own existence and his entire cosmic kingdom rather than harm the innocent birds.
But the profound irony is, when the charioteer turns this massive 150-league vehicle around, the pursuing demonic army sees Sakka charging directly back at them.
Yeah, they have no idea why he's turning around.
They assume he must be leading fresh reinforcements, so the demons panic and flee in terror. His willingness to sacrifice everything is exactly what wins him the ultimate victory.
This completely upends the social hierarchy of the ancient world. Throughout these 550 stories, the bodhisattva takes on wildly different forms.
Yeah, like you said, a merchant, an animal, a god.
Exactly. The texts are arguing that true nobility is completely decoupled from your species, your class, or your social status. I mean, a deer can display far more moral courage than a human king. A poor merchant with a dead mouse can wield more wisdom than a royal advisor. Nobility is defined entirely by selfless action.
So what does this all mean? We've covered everything from Greek philosophers to cosmic chariots to golden deer. For you listening to this right now, it's easy to dismiss these as just ancient magical fables.
Sure, they sound like fairy tales.
But look closely, and you'll see they are incredibly demanding blueprints for how to live today. They're actively asking you, do you have the grit to swing the hammer one more time when you've hit rock in the desert?
Yeah.
Do you have the self-awareness to see the hidden cost of the honey in your life, whether that's your smartphone, your ego, or your jealousy of the fattened pig? And most importantly, when the time comes, do you have the courage to place yourself on the block for someone else? These 2,500-year-old stories are directly interrogating the choices you are making this very afternoon.
This raises an important question. In the strict logic of the Jatakas, time is a loop, right? And every minor action ripples across lifetimes.
Right.
What you are doing right now inevitably becomes the story of the past for a future existence. If your life right now is a story of the past that will determine a future outcome, what kind of groundwork are your choices laying today?
That's a heavy thought.
When the identification is finally made, who will you have been? The greedy valuer, the stubborn deer who refused to learn, or the resourceful, compassionate leader?
It really makes you wonder what kind of X-ray Pythagoras was actually looking at when he claimed to see his own past, doesn't it?
It definitely does.
Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive for Simplified Awakening. Take the brutal, beautiful wisdom of the Jatakas into your week. Swing the hammer, watch out for the honey on the grass, and please stay hooked for our next story. We will see you next time.